There are a lot of questions surrounding the Cincinnati Bengals pass rush, and if they don't get them answered, could that sink the season? Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow. He's James Rapien, and we are your hosts of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Been covering this team on this podcast since 2016 between the two of us, and if you're looking for a place to get daily updates, news, analysis on your Cincinnati Bengals, you are in the right place. You can hit that subscribe button on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts and join all the everydayers out there that don't miss an episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We appreciate all of you so very much, including those of you who make Locked On Bengals your first listen and have all those good listening habits that we'd like to talk about here on Locked On Bengals. For those of you wondering, we are back to 5 episodes a week, the week before training camp. So we've got one more week on the 3 episode a week schedule. The everydayers know this and have heard us talk about this before, but for the next couple of weeks, or for the next week, I guess, we're coming up on training camp in a hurry. Look for episodes on Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, afternoon, evening. And then we'll be back with a training camp preview that week before training camp. Today, James, we dive into a vintage Locked On Bengals mailbag where there are just a ton of questions here about the pass rush in some way, shape, or form, whether it's about Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, whether it's about, even if Trey is Trey, where's the pass rush coming from? It's a big topic. It's heavily on the minds of our listeners today. And I think at this point in the offseason, a good time to talk about it. So let's start here before we dive into the questions. How concerned do you think people should be overall about the Bengals pass rush? And let's say assuming Trey plays this year.
Concerned. I think that's the biggest question mark of the defense. To me, there's reason to believe the secondary could be okay. And we've seen Logan Wilson play solid. They drafted a linebacker who should be entering his prime right now. So I think when you look at that, it's like, all right, well, what's the biggest concern? And they addressed TJ Slayton. They addressed the nose tackle issue from a strict run stopping standpoint. I think he'll help there. But it's pass rush. Are you going to have enough juice? Are you going to be able to, on 3rd and 16 and 4th and 16, get after opposing quarterbacks and make them uncomfortable and not let Jaden Daniels stay in rhythm all game long, not let Lamar go up and down the field like he did and make him uncomfortable? Are you going to be able to do that? That's the question. And the pass rush would go a long way. And with Trey, you still need, I would say, multiple pieces, multiple guys, whether it's Joseph Osai, Myles Murphy, obviously Shamar Stewart, step up on the edge. And then you're really hoping that TJ Slayton can unlock a bit more on the interior, whether it's BJ Hill, whether it's Chris Jenkins, but one of these guys, maybe it's McKinley Jackson, to give you some interior pressure. We'll see if it happens, but I think it's the biggest question mark when it comes to this defense by far.
It's kind of the piece that could either lock or unlock the rest of the defense. It's a Band-Aid for so many teams where, yeah, if they can get after the passer, it can cover up deficiencies in the secondary potentially, or it can cover up issues elsewhere, coverage bust, for example, because you're home that quickly. And we've seen Trey Hendrickson specifically accomplish this before on his own at times. He can take over games at times, but to your point, I really wonder about the interior pressure and where that part is going to be solved. So while we know that's a concern, let's get to our mailbag questions that are thematically on point. The first one from Booney KY at Booney KY2U on Twitter asking, assuming Trey is Trey, which Bengal do you see being the second highest sacker this season? And how many? Where is that secondary pass rush coming from?
Oh boy. I think the most popular answer would be Joseph Osai. I have an idea that it might be Shamar Stewart. I still think that it could be Shamar. And it would be so funny if he, like everyone says, 4.5 sacks coming into the year, and then he ends up with 5 or 6. And that's kind of the question for me. I don't really care who's second. What's that second number? Because I want it to be like 8, to be clear. Like 8 is like when you think of Hubbard and Hendrickson, and when Sam Hubbard was at his best, he's getting you like 7, 8 sacks and was really good against the run. And like, you can deal with that. I say deal with it. You'll live with that and you'll feel pretty good about it. But if whoever it is, if it's Osai or Murphy or Stewart, it's like 5 or 6, well, then you're going to be like, everybody better have 5 or 6. That better be why that's where I'm at. Is it's like, I think it could be any of those guys. I think a lot of people would say Osai. We'll see. I think Joseph Osai has a lot to prove. Consistency, health. There's a lot of questions. So I would probably say Shamar Stewart, knowing that wouldn't be necessarily the first or even the second option.
So just looking at the last couple of years, with PFF sack counting. So PFF doesn't do half sacks. They do only, they say if you got a sack, you got a sack. It's a full sack. Trey last year, they, of course, had at 18 sacks. Second was Joseph Osai with 5 sacks, with second in pressures for the Bengals in just 15 games was BJ Hill in 2024. And BJ Hill probably has an outside shot at being the second highest. If they have a bunch of guys right around 5 or 6, like you said, in that world, BJ Hill has done that sort of thing before. You go back 2 years, Trey Hendrickson had 6 using PFF counting. BJ Hill again in 2023 was second on the team in pressures, had 5 sacks. Sam Hubbard had 6 sacks, according to PFF counting in 2023. Go all the way back to 2022, and Sam Hubbard had 10 PFF sacks. Trey only had 9 that year, but more pressures. BJ Hill again right there with 5. So the question is really, does Joseph Osai jump up to 8? Does Myles Murphy jump up to 8? Or are you talking about a conglomerate of guys who are going to be around that 5, 4, 6? And can you get multiple guys at 4 to 6 sacks to go with Trey, hopefully reprising a 15-ish sack season? Because if you can get that, then maybe that's enough. But This is 3 years now where outside of Trey, they really haven't had enough. There's no one else winning on their own. They've got all these young pieces now. They need somebody, ideally somebody on the interior too. And it's hard to see where that's coming from based on what we've seen from those guys so far. But you need somebody to step up and be a real secondary piece.
Yeah, it would be nice. And maybe this is their realistic hope. Instead of one guy giving you 10, maybe it's like 6, 6, and then you get an interior guy not named BJ Hill with 4. And so BJ Hill has 5 or 4, and then you have another guy on the interior that gets you to that number. Because then you look up, and if Trey Hendrickson's at 15, and then you have 3 guys that have 5 or 6, and then you have 2 interior guys that combine for 8, you look up and it's like, okay, well, you're getting to the quarterback enough. You're getting by, and you're going to have some blitz sacks, and hopefully maybe Dak Sugg gives you 3 or 4. You know, who knows? Who knows how they go with that? But you're going to have to get to, however it is, the sum of the parts is going to have to be what do you think overall sack wise? 50 sacks?
Where were they last year? Like 35 or something? Like it was miserable last year. I think there is a minimum that you have to get to be reasonably viable, but where they haven't necessarily had crazy sack totals in the past, they've been able to get after the passer in significant ways from a pressure perspective. Last year, the Bengals had 36 sacks.
Yeah, there were only 3 teams with more than 50 last year. The Broncos led the way with 63. So if you get in the 40s, you're probably good. You want 43 to 47 in that range.
So you're probably passable at that point. You go back to 2022, they only had 30 sacks. So you're passable at that point. 2020, 17 sacks. So like the Bengals, for the most part, have not been racking up sacks at a rate where you need them to be where you need them to be.
Yeah.
So a big task ahead, I think, for them from a pressure perspective this year. We have a couple more questions about the pass rush, about defensive ends. We will jump back into those questions coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets easier and faster than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you could save 60% off with killer last-minute deals. Whether it's a sporting event, I use Gametime to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, or concerts, Gametime is the place to go. And the Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection, plus the panoramic view directly from your seat is going to show you exactly what you're going to get with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Diving back into the mailbag, James, we have predictably a Shamar Stewart question. This one comes from Tony Blunt at Admiral Taskbar on Twitter. Assuming that Shamar Stewart is present for the entirety of training camp, at what point will we get a sense of how ready he is for the NFL? It seems like it would be hard to judge a rookie edge rusher adequately in a training camp setting.
It will be. It will be. And I think it's going to be hard even in preseason. Let's say he's out there. You want to see the disruption. You want to see how he does look when they go live against Orlando Brown Jr. and go live against Amarius Mims, of course. But if he's dominant, you're going to be like, okay, well, he's still going to have to get the quarterback on the ground, which is obviously was an issue for him in college. And if he's not, well, it's okay. He's figuring it out because he's going up against those guys. So I'm not sure we're going to get an answer one way or another, but you get some information, and that experience is the real key, I think, is it getting through, whether it's figuring it out or figuring out the strength and the size and everything that he's going to deal with in the NFL. And he's got plenty of it, but it's different in the NFL. Life is going to be different. And so we're going to be able to tell some of it, but we've seen guys be disruptive in the preseason. Joseph Osai, when he got in the preseason, it was like, oh my goodness, his rookie year, he's going to matter. Then he gets hurt. And really since then, outside of some flashes, it hasn't been there. It doesn't mean it's not going to be there this year. It could be. I get why they re-signed him, by the way. It's not an anti-Joseph Osai thing. But my point is you want to see flashes, but even if you see those flashes, it doesn't mean he's going to be great. At the same time, if you don't see those flashes, it doesn't mean that he's going to be a bum or a bust. And so I think that gathering the information is valuable, but I'm not going to overreact. And by mid-year, we should see some regular disruption. I think that would be a realistic thing. That might start week one, and you may check that box, but it may take a few weeks for him to get acclimated for sure.
The thing that I like about this question is that it's when will we know how ready he is for the NFL? And I think the Joseph Osai example is so interesting because, yeah, he got hurt, and that probably really threw things off for him. But he was also playing a ton, which suggested that from a coaching perspective, they thought he needed that run. They thought he needed that experience. And so I think if we're seeing a lot of Shamar Stewart late into preseason games, especially as the preseason is coming to an end, we'll have a pretty good idea of how ready the coaches think he is for the NFL. If they think he needs those reps, that probably means the coaching staff thinks that he's not quite ready. He needs more seasoning. He needs that experience. He needs as much experience as he can get. If we see them scale it back for him a little bit, and you see a ton of production, you see him, working in with the ones in practices. You see him taking over with the ones and getting a predominant stretch of work with the first team defensive line in team drills. And then you see that also translate to preseason games, or maybe it's early in the season. Maybe it's week 2. You see Shamar Stewart's a starter. Then I think you'll have a sense of what the coaches think. Now, whether or not the coaches are right is another question, but I think that is the easiest barometer from the outside for the question of NFL readiness, Like the coaches are probably sitting there assessing his NFL readiness as much as they can going into the season because they're trying to figure out what are our rotations. Is this guy active, or do we think Cedric Johnson is in a better place because he has a year of experience under his belt? Like, I'm not saying that that's a likely question for them to be talking, but it's not a totally unreasonable thing. Like if Shamar Stewart doesn't show up for 3 weeks of training camp because they can't get the deal done and he doesn't get onto the field, like then that's a real question going into the regular season. This is saying, assuming that he's there for all of training camp, they should have those answers by then. But I think those are the ways that you'll be able to determine how ready at least the coaches feel he is to play in the NFL. Hopefully he's getting a lot of playing time because we've got this history with Cincinnati rookies, especially first round rookies, not making a big impact unless they're first overall picks or fifth overall picks. And so it'd be nice to see the Bengals get that first year impact here from Shamar Stewart.
Yeah. If I'm him, I would be approaching training camp. Obviously you have all the contract stuff, but you also have to separate that. If I'm him, my goal would be, all right, I'm going to be a day one starter. And that should have been his goal when he was drafted. That should be his goal now. We'll see if he can get there. We'll see if he can earn the trust. I get it. Joseph Ossai's a veteran, all those things. Miles Murphy's year 3, prove it. If I'm Shamar, I'm like, I'm bigger, better, faster, stronger than you. I'm going to go earn it. We'll see if it happens. But that should be his mindset, I would say, as training camp approaches.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, should be everybody's mindset. Whether or not you can deliver on that mindset.
Well, like Charlie Jones knows he's not starting. You know, like
every young player on this defensive line should be going into training camp thinking, I'm going to win a starting job.
You think Chris Jenkins could win starting over BJ Hill, I guess?
That should be the mentality. I mean, Chris Jenkins is a starter in some packages because like defensive tackle is weird. Slayton's going to be a starter, quote unquote, in some packages. And I think unless it's McKinley Jackson, then it's going to be Chris Jenkins and other interior defensive lineman combinations.
Yeah, I don't think there's as many starting jobs open. Anyway, I'm not trying to take it down that.
I mean, I'm mostly thinking about edge, right? Like every single edge guy besides Trey Hendrickson should be going into training camp thinking, I'm going to go win that job. And that includes Shamar Stewart. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like whether or not you can deliver on that mentality is an entirely other question, separate question.
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt. One of the many questions as we go into camp.
Speaking of training camp, a couple of questions here pertaining to potential moves that could happen as a result of training camp or potentially some outside of the box thinking requested from our listeners. We'll finish with those questions coming up next.
Some moves. You got a question about some moves. Everyone knows I like moves, Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like dance moves or what?
Well, yes. Everyone that watches knows I like. You gotta hit him with the shoulder shimmy. All right. What questions we have?
So just to set the stage here, one of the first questions I saw when I was looking at our mailbag questions was from Bengal bro Nick. And he was asking, do you feel like the Bengals brass are that much smarter than fans? The glaring need at guard literally puts your entire franchise in limbo. So that's like the mentality that we've got with some fans right now. Yeah. As Paul Dehner Jr. is currently conducting his fan survey over The Athletic. And it's always interesting to see those results tend to be on a downslope when the team isn't performing well. And I'm expecting that'll be the case this year. But Paul Kennedy then asks a specific question. And love it when we get questions from over the pond. Paul's in Manchester in England. Which position group is most likely to disappoint in training camp in the preseason so much that the team is forced to go get a guy? Is it the interior offensive line and they feel like they have to get Scherf or have to get Risner? Is it at safety? Julian Blackman. We've talked about him a ton. Is it a corner? Do they feel like they're going to need to go get a veteran corner? Is it a wide receiver? Do they feel like maybe their depth is tested and they need a better option to be wide receiver 3? Or is it not listed in this set of multiple choice answers from Paul?
We're not doing health, right? We're not saying, oh, well.
I mean, obviously, if a guy gets hurt, then that could force their hand.
So as it's presently constructed, where is it? Oh, man. If this is a tough question. I don't think it's receiver. right? And I'm going to leave off the field as well. You obviously hope Jermaine can establish himself as a fourth guy. I think they feel really good about 1 through 3, and Mike Gesicki's part of that 3. I don't think it's a tight end. I think they feel pretty confident there. I'm just trying to think of like where it would be. And to me, because a lot of people would say guard, but wouldn't they just say, all right, well, Cody Ford,
Yeah.
or, all right, well, Cordell, or all right, well, maybe they go to the Matt Lee or the Jalen Rivers. Like, I just think that that's where they would go before signing. Like, I really do. And so it's tough for me to say that. I think it might be safety. They save some money on Geno. If Geno just is awful in camp, and I haven't heard that that was the case this offseason, and so maybe it's not. Maybe he's playing well. I don't think it's linebacker at all. I don't think that they're going to say, all right, well, we're going to go sign Zadarius Smith now on the edge. Maybe you could say interior pass rusher, but there's a reason they haven't gone out and gotten anyone yet. And there really isn't much out there. So I would say probably safety would be the one. And I don't think it's that likely either. Like, I kind of think that they like where they're at in a lot of these spots, for better or worse.
I think from a perspective of the positions listed, I tend to agree. I think they have too many options on the offensive line to really say that they're going to go make a move, which
in their mind,
they absolutely should. But I mean, we've consistently all offseason been asking for them to sign a real starting guard, from first wave free agency to every single week since then. Corner, I could only see corner happening if they really have a lot of injuries there. I think that's also true for wide receiver. I don't necessarily think a safety move is likely. I think that if you were to say what position is most likely to see the Bengals have to go sign a veteran in the preseason process, I would say interior defensive line. But that's assuming that like health is a potential issue at some point, because it seems like it's often an issue, and they only have 4 guys and a couple college free agents there.
One injury. Exactly. Like if BJ Hill isn't fully healed at the start of camp, well, they're probably adding somebody, right?
Yeah, if it's like a start of camp issue, then it might be a college free agent type, like a CFL, type of player, something like that, like a guy that's like a long shot to make the practice squad. And we've seen them do this in the past, like the 90th player on the 90 man, if BJ Hill is not ready. But if it's something like, what they dealt with last year, where they had guys go out and they weren't going to be ready for week 1, then I think having lived through what they lived through last year, they might go get a veteran in that case. And now it might not be a guy that you're very excited about, like it wasn't last year, but I think that depth issue there could force their hand.
Yeah. It's wild because a lot of us would say guard, a lot of us would say pass rusher. Zadarius Smith, you'd be in on, right? I would. Like, why not add a proven guy? Julian Blackmon, we'd be in on. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people would be in on Justin Simmons. And what's interesting is I think the Bengals would say, not we like who we have, but we have guys that are just as good. Like Geno Stone is better than Julian Blackmon. There's a reason he's out there. There's a reason why this guy or that guy. We'll see. Asante Samuel Jr. would be the one that I would be open to, even with the health stuff. I heard he's gonna be healthy by the time the season rolls around. So that would be a guy I would take a flyer on. I don't think they are in on it, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of players that you should kick the tires on. What about outside the box? This is the final question coming from Final Boss at the Cisco 89 on Twitter. What are the non-obvious additions that you would like to see the Bengals make? Is it a running back, a kicker, a long snapper? What kind of outside the box addition do you think we should be talking about?
Ooh, outside the box would be, I think wide receiver would be potentially outside the box. Honestly, I know we've thought about it a little bit and talked about it. It's really how much are you, because you have 3 guys you really believe in T, Jamar, and Andre. You have a fourth guy in Mike Gesicki who helps in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we'll see on Jermaine, we'll see on Charlie Jones, we'll see on all these guys, and I think that would be the one, I think, and I think it would surprise a lot of people. But Isaiah Williams, I think he's an intriguing prospect as he goes into year 2. But if he makes the team, it's probably just going to be because of his return ability. I think we kind of know what Kendrick Pryor is. So that would be the one, I think, that would surprise a lot of people that they theoretically could look at and be like, especially if they don't think that Jermaine is ready to go, and say, all right, well, can we find the next Trenton Irwin veteran stabilizing guy that can come in and just do what we tell him to do?
You're talking about the margins at that point. It's hard to find an outside the box idea that could help them significantly, because we've talked about all the things that we think could help them significantly so much. And that's like the guard, the safety, the defensive lineman. And we've talked about those a ton. All offseason, we've talked about those. The one that I would throw out potentially is maybe a tight end. I don't think that guy is out there, though. And I don't know who exactly is available. I have to go look. But maybe a tight end is really the only idea that I've got. And luckily, Matt Bowen from ESPN just put out a new list of the best free agents available. So I'm going to take a peek at that real quick here and see if there's a tight end on his list. There's not. So 17 guys.
Oh, buddy. Yeah.
There's some edge guys. There's some safeties.
Yeah.
Jedrick Wills reportedly going to sit out the year, but we've talked about Jedrick Wills.
Yeah. By the way, if he wasn't sitting out the year, I would be in on that. But
what about Mike Hilton? You think that like totally ship sailed? Like say they get to camp, they're not really happy with what they have in the slot. You think that Mike Hilton just doesn't fit what they're doing?
Yeah, I do.
I
think that's where they're at, unfortunately. And I love Mike. I would love to have Mike on this roster. Like that's the balance. But I think from what they're doing, because there's a difference. One, what we would do, one, what they're doing, and one, what we think they would do. And I just don't think that Mike is in the mix there. I do think he'll sign before camp, but not here. Not here.
That's too bad too. Still playing, reasonably well.
Dude, I mean, yeah, you could use him.
It's weird you could use him that he's not on a team right now.
Yeah, and maybe that's his choice. I should ask him how things are going. I haven't talked to him in a while. Yeah, I hope so. The thing is, you don't want him like freaking joining the Steelers and blitzing Burrow and having to deal with that. Like, I just don't want to deal with Mike. Like, go sign somewhere where we'll see you in Santa Clara, Mike, in February. Not before that. He joins the Ravens and he's just like part of that.
Well, the Ravens are probably pretty full at corner, but yeah, like the return to Pittsburgh, like the James Harrison kind of thing, where you just go and be a thorn in the Bengals side again.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time here. We've got a question that is going to prompt an entire episode here from Vincent Bayless. So look for that in our next episode. Who are the lottery players for the Cincinnati Bengals? The players that
lottery? I like the
outside of the stars, the long shots to hit. And if they do hit, it can make a big difference. We'll talk about the Bengals lottery tickets in our next episode. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.